Hi, I'm Richie Zellen, and this is the second video in a two-part series regarding the often neglected subject of ear training for guitarists. Today, I want to discuss the three fundamental levels of ear training I believe you need in order to become a good jazz guitarist. The mastery of these levels will help you acquire another important resource, which I will also discuss, and I am talking about the ability to hear music in layers. Interested? Welcome back to the Jazz Guitar channel, and if this is your first time and you want to learn everything you can about jazz guitar, please consider subscribing and be sure to click the notification bell so you won't miss a thing. Music is not monophonic. That is, we are not limited to hearing just one note at a time, like when we sing in the shower a cappella. Music has harmony, which is polyphonic, so we have to train our ears to hear different combinations of notes. These combinations can be happening together, such as in a chord, or rhythmically independent of each other, like in counterpoint. So there are different levels of ear training we need to master in order to identify the entire spectrum of musical textures that we can hear. When we have finally mastered all these levels, we acquire the ability to hear music in layers. And this is the aural equivalent of those vivid dreams in 3D we sometimes have. And this phenomena enables you to imagine or internally pre-hear a whole piece of music comprised of various layers. There are three basic layers that all great jazz improvisers hear. And this is what I am going to describe next, as well as give you some examples of how they are practiced. The first layer consists of the root motion, or sometimes the bass line of a progression. This is a monophonic level of ear training and a prerequisite in order to hear more layers. This is also the foundation for relative pitch. So in order to get started, you must first have the ability to match any given pitch with your voice. Now keep in mind that you are not training to become a vocalist. So when you match the pitch, it's okay if you're in a different octave or register, and if you're slightly flat. Let me demonstrate. So let's say that I play a pitch. Of course, I hear a pitch and I can match it with my voice right away, and most people can, but there are many of you out there, I'm sure, that can't do that. So let's see what the process to match that pitch should consist of. Let's find a different one. If you play a guitar and you play on the first 4 strings, it's usually going to be pretty high and outside of your range. So you're going to have to match that pitch in a lower octave. I got two choices. I got the choice of going down lower or going up until I find that pitch in a different octave. So let's go up. When you find that pitch like I did here, you'll notice everything matches up. Once you can do this, you are ready to begin interval recognition. As I'm sure you already know, an interval is the distance between two pitches, and when dealing with them monophonically, we can play them ascending or descending. In other words, if I play a pitch and follow it with a higher pitch, the relationship between them is that of an ascending interval. If I do the reverse, it is a descending interval. In order to identify intervals, we need to place them in the context of a given scale. Traditionally, in Western culture, the major scale is used as a starting point to learn intervals. And this is because the major tonality containing these intervals is what most popular music we hear is made up of. So obviously, we need to know the scale first before we can start. Let me demonstrate. Each one of these degrees after the root is what we call an interval, the distance between two pitches. In this case, we're looking at the distance between the root and each subsequent degree of the scale. So this is the root, this would be the second, the third, in this case, this was the major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, and here we start again. This is the octave, or we can call it the one again. But what we do in ear training is we want to isolate each one of those intervals and be able to hear them, identify them against that root. So a good starting point for that is to sing the major scale. 1, 1. Of course, by the time you do this, you should be able to match your voice with any pitch. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I had to go into my falsetto voice there. If not, I was going to have a really scream and I wasn't going to reach the pitch. But that's the first step. You got to be able to do that. Then you got to be able to just play the root and basically sing the interval, the next interval in the scale. In this case, it would be the second. 2, then check to see if it's correct. Then 3, 4, 5, and then jump around, root, and I'm going to go to a 5. 5, 3, and so forth. Now, a good ear training program will have all of this organized in a way that you can gradually learn all the intervals. There are many songs that you've probably heard that begin with each one of the existing intervals. So instead of starting from scratch when learning the sound of an interval, it's easier to relate it to something we may already have heard and can immediately recall. I'm sure if you do a search for interval ear training songs, you will find several lists. Now, to give you a couple of examples, the first two notes in When the Saints Come Marching In make up an ascending major third. Oh when the saints. The first two notes in the Star Wars theme make up an ascending perfect fifth. Dun, 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 da, 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 da. The bottom line is that in the first level of ear training, you will have to train to hear and identify the different combinations of ascending and descending intervals in relationship to any pitch. At the end of this video, I will give you alternate resources to help you organize and practice all three levels that I am describing. Once we can hear and identify all the intervals in major and minor scales, we are ready to begin the second level of ear training and start hearing music in 2 layers. The second layer is made up of the harmony or chord progression in a piece of music. So now that we can hear the root motion or bass line in an initial layer, we are learning how to hear the chords in a second layer. Here we begin dealing with polyphony. Let me demonstrate. Let's play a 2-5-1. That's the root motion for a 2-5-1 in the key of C. So now we want to hear the flat 3, so we can hear the chord, and the flat 3 is one of the guide tones. The main guide tones in a chord are the 3 and the 7 always, because you can hear the chord sound with those two intervals, the 3 and the 7. So I'll sing the flat 3. 3. Now I'm going to the 5 chord. Flat 7. Notice that the same pitch that was the flat 3 now becomes the flat 7 in relationship to the 5 chord. And now I'm going to the 1, and I'm going to re-sol half step down. Flat 7, 3. So 3, flat 3, flat 7, 3, major 3. Okay? So we do that with all sorts of different progressions that we're going to run into when playing different standards, and that's really going to train our ears to be able to hear those changes. Upon mastering this level, you should be able to hear chord voicings and identify all the chord tones, including upper extensions, that it is made up of. Traditionally, you should start with the 4 basic triad types, and once you are comfortable with them, practice hearing all the different varieties of 7th chords. This should be done with all of its inversions. Let me demonstrate. So the 4 triad types are major, 1, 3, 5, minor, 1, flat 3, 5, diminished, 1, flat 3, diminished 5th, and augmented, 1, major 3rd, augmented 5th. So we got to learn how to hear those triads first, and we learn how to sing them, starting from any pitch. Let's go down here to A. Let's say I want to sing diminished triad. I would sing root 1, flat 3, then diminished 5th, la la la. Okay, and I would do that with the different inversions of that triad. For example, the first inversions would start with a flat 3, would play the diminished 5th next, and finally would have the root at the top. So, la la la. And then we have a second inversion where we start with the flatted 5th or the diminished 5th at the bottom. Then that's followed by the root, and we have the flat 3, the minor 3rd on top. Da, da, da. So we learn how to hear all these different inversions, which is very important. And that's a tough one there, but I thought I'd just give you an example of where we're headed with all of this when we do ear training, so you can see how much there is there to learn. There is a lot. Once we can do that, once we can sing triads, it's just a matter of adding the 7th degree of the scale, and we have all our 7th chords. For example, if I have a major triad, 1, 3, 5, and I want to turn that into a dominant 7th chord, I add the flatted 7, 1, 3, 5, flat 7, da 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 da. And of course there is a method to all of this madness, and I'm sure some of you out there that are not familiar with the whole ear training process are saying, well, this guy is taking all of this stuff for granted and not telling us how to do it. Well, showing you how to do this in detail, step by step, is definitely beyond the scope of this lesson. It would take forever. It would take several volumes and volumes. So the point of this video is to show you what ear training, the 3 levels of ear training consist of. It's not how to master them fully. We're going to talk more about that briefly. And of course, once we have our basic 7th chords down, we learn how to hear and add the upper extensions, like the 9ths, the 11ths, the 13ths, and all the varieties thereof. So for example, I had previously played a dominant 7th. I can add a 9th to that. 1, 3, 5, flat 7. Now if I go up a third, a diatonic third, I'll have 9, 9. I can't reach it with my voice, so 9. I'm sure many of you are cracking up saying, what is this idiot trying to do, man? He's making a total fool of himself. But that's exactly what I'm trying to say. You don't have to be a singer or a vocalist, but you do have to match those pitches as closely as possible just for your own sake. You want to be able to hear them, okay? It is not enough to identify individual chord voicings. Unless the bass is in root position, a chord voicing can assume different identities. Therefore, we must learn to hear them in different harmonic contexts. So once you can hear and identify a bass line and individual chord voicings, the next step in your ear training is to be able to hear and identify different chord progressions. This, for the most part, happens pretty quickly if you've mastered the previous steps. And at this point, you should be able to hear the bass line and the moving changes in the back of your head, and accordingly, improvise a line that blends with that harmony. This line we improvise is our 3rd layer. Every good jazz musician is hearing and working with these 3 oral layers when they improvise, whether or not they are aware of it. And these are the 3 levels of ear training I believe every jazz improviser should master. But there is more for those that want to go deeper. And this is where we get into counterpoint and add a 4th layer consisting of yet another independent moving line. Great musicians, especially classical composers, can hear even more layers. It is a well-known fact that Beethoven, by the time he became deaf, was already able to internally hear multiple independent layers consisting of complex counterpoint and orchestral textures that encompassed a wide variety of registers. In today's world of music, many great jazz composers and arrangers have the ability to internally hear a whole big band passage and notate the music straight to paper without even touching a piano or a guitar. And this is really an advantage when inspiration strikes without knocking. Before concluding, I want to add that it takes years of practice to acquire even the simplest level of multi-layered hearing, but the rewards are innumerable. When you reach this level, your limitations are mainly incumbent upon the technical command you possess of your instrument and its possibilities. Other than that, you are then in control of the music, or should we say, you become the music. So if you are new to ear training or feel like you're in a rut with it, I have a couple of resources I can recommend to get you started. The first resource is very popular in this day and age, and I am talking about a great number of apps and software ear training programs. I am not really an expert on what is out there these days, so I will ask of all of you who have experience with this to please take a brief moment to recommend any good program you know of in the comments section down below. I know that you can get some apps for your smartphone, which is really a very convenient deal. Now, I must warn you that most of these apps don't necessarily have an organized training program that you should follow, like what I have described in this video. So you will be left to your own devices as far as structuring a lesson plan. Also, most of them do not cover polyphonic ear training, but they are still a good resource to get started with the first level of ear training I have described. If you want something more elaborate that covers all three levels I described in organized detail, I have a second resource I want to recommend. My online bebop guitar improv course includes an ear training lab where I provide all the proper exercises in order of gradual difficulty. In addition, I teach all the rudiments of bebop improvisation and provide countless exercises to get you to think in terms of intervallic patterns versus fixed notes. This is a very important perspective related to the process of pre-hearing. There are 2 volumes of this course, each one lasting a year, and guess what? They are very affordable. So if you're serious about taking your playing to the next level, please be sure to check out the following page for more info. bebopguitar.richiezelland.com. I have conveniently also placed a direct link in the info section down below this video. I'd love to hear from you, and if any of you know of any good ear training apps that you can recommend, many of us would appreciate your feedback. Also, please be sure to share any comments or questions you may have on the subjects I have discussed. Finally, if you enjoyed this lesson and you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and be sure to click on the bell icon so you won't miss a thing. Have fun and see you in the next video.